So I just want to talk about a few of my other favorite grooming tools that are not really essential. So one of them is the Shire's Cactus Cloth. And this is really great for that time of year, especially during the winter, when your horse gets that horrible dry dust that's almost impossible to brush off. And it almost seems like every time you brush it, it gets worse and worse. So this cactus cloth is pretty much a miracle for that type of hard to remove dirt. I use it as almost a curry comb, so I use it in a curry comb method, and then I'll even come back and use it again in long strokes following the direction of the hair growth. So I almost use it as multiple tools, and it really helps to get off some of that hard to remove dirt and hair. But it's also good when your horse is even cleaner, because I find that this also helps increase the shine in their coat. So sometimes I'll use this, especially if I'm at a show or something, I'll use this after my soft brush. And so I just use this the same way I would my soft brush or my hard brush, following the path of the hair. And it really does sort of help to just get off anything that you might have missed and make the coat even shinier and more finished looking. The other brush that I really like, again, this is from Haas also. So I've always had sort of cheap, mediocre brushes until Christmas, and I got these Haas brushes as a gift, and they are absolutely amazing, and I love them. So this one with these really long bristles, it's like somewhere in between a soft and a hard brush. It's not quite as hard as a hard brush, but not quite as soft as a soft brush. And it's got these really long bristles, and they call it a flick brush. And the reason they call it that is because you use it with your wrist sort of in a flicking motion. And so you kind of go like this, and it's to use to flick the dirt and hair off of their body. And so sometimes if after I use my hard brush, I feel like my horse still has too much heavy dirt to move to my soft brush, I'll use this flick brush in between the hard and soft brushes to really make sure that I'm getting everything off. I'm gonna go ahead and do her face, and I'm gonna do all steps of her face in one. And so I start out with the curry comb, and I like to use the softer side of the curry comb with the smaller edges, so that I don't press on the bones and the sensitive nerves of the face with this a little bit harder side. So I'm going to go ahead and curry her face just like I would the rest of her body. So I'm going to go around in circles, and you might not want to push down quite as hard on the face as you do the rest of the body, but you can still put a good bit of elbow grease in there to really make sure you're getting all of that dirt out. And I like to brush behind her ears and then also brush her ears themselves. And especially during the summer around here, they will sometimes get some rain rot buildup on their face. And I've noticed that if I make sure to really curry her face every day, that she doesn't get quite as much rain rot on her face. So I'm going to go ahead and brush both sides pretty well. You can see the dirt and the loose hairs coming up to the surface. So then, once I finish with the curry comb, I'm going to go ahead and use my face brush, which this is the Smart Pack version, but any kind works. But basically the face brush is a little bit smaller than your hard brush or your soft brush, and the bristles are exceptionally soft. So these I think are made out of goat hair, and they're very soft and very fine. I'm going to use my face brush in the same way that I would use my hard or soft brush, in gentle strokes following the direction that the hair grows. And so I'm just going to start up here on her forehead, and then make sure I get behind her ears. And the good thing about this smaller, softer brush is that it allows you to really get in all the grooves of their face. So if you imagine trying to use your hard or soft brush back here behind their ears or over their ears and eyes, right, it'd be a little bit harder just because the brush is a little bit larger and more unwieldy. So as I'm starting to finish up with this face brush, I noticed that it's really hard to get off all the hair and dirt from the face using a brush. And so I like to use a damp rag after I go through my soft brush, or my face brush. And so I like to use the damp rag to just kind of go back over everywhere and just wipe off any remaining dirt and hair. And the damp rag just does a little bit of a better job. And so I use a damp rag on their face almost every single day. It's not just for shows, but when we do our show grooming session, that final shine. But I do like to use the rag when I'm at home too. And then sometimes I actually use this other product, Sport Horse Essentials Waterless Shampoo and Stain Remover. And sometimes I'll spray this on my damp rag as I go to use it on their face. And this stuff smells amazing, and it also helps get off, you know, the rest of the dirt and grime that they might have on their face. So I like to use that on the parts of her face that are more likely to get rain rocked. And I think it just helps keep it a little bit cleaner and shinier. So then once I finish that, and I feel like the face is nice and clean and shiny, I like to go ahead and get the nostrils and the eyes. So sometimes there's a little bit of dirt buildup in the nose, in the nostrils, and around the eyes. And so I'll use the same damp rag to get in her nostrils. And I like to kind of reach up in there a little bit and get up a little bit higher than the part of the nostril that you can see, because you know, it's like our nose, things run down. So if you're about to go into the dressage ring, or even if you're just cleaning their nose for your regular home ride, I like to try to get up in there a little bit more so that nothing ends up dripping down into the nostrils as you're working. So then I'm also gonna go ahead and get her eyes. And I just like to get any eye boogers out and any dirt that builds up around the eye. And now I feel like she's got a pretty clean face. Let me make sure I get under my halter there. Okay, so now I feel like her face is looking pretty clean. So one last final step that I like to do, this is especially for shows or clinics, or if I really want my horse to look extra fancy, but I also like to do it for regular rides. So I like to use either a baby oil gel, a Vaseline, or even just regular baby oil works. And so what I'll do is I'll squirt a little bit into my hand, and then you want to rub it around and warm it up in your hands, just because you don't want it to go on globby. And so I like to do this, it just gives them a little bit more of a final shine. And so I like to get the corners of the mouth especially. You know, in the summer it's not as bad, but sometimes during the winter, you know, the corners of your horse's mouth gets really dry and the bit can irritate it. And so I like to put a little bit on the corners of the mouth, and then a lot of times I like to hit her nose and into her nostrils. And you'll see she has this really cute white snip here. Now it's nice and clean and shiny. And then I'll also use a little bit of what's remaining and kind of go over their eyes to give them a nice clean shine, and then also over their ears. And you know, it just gives, it does a little bit more, it kind of holds the hair in place, gives them a little bit more shine, makes it look moisturized and just really healthy. So that's just a little trick that we like to do to make sure that the face looks really shiny and clean. So now that I've finished brushing her entire body, so just to recap, we've gone through the curry comb, the hard brush, the soft brush, and we've done the curry comb on her face and the face brush. We also used a couple of my favorites that aren't necessarily necessities, which was the tendon brush, the flick brush, and the cactus cloth. So now her whole body is pretty clean, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to her mane and tail. And so I like to start with the forelock, but it doesn't matter. And this is my mane and tail brush that I like to use. So I'm going to go ahead and brush her forelock. She doesn't have a whole lot of forelock to brush, so it only takes me a second. And then we're going to come over here and get her mane. Her mane is pretty short right now, so she mostly has a mohawk. And so whenever I brush her mane, I like to brush it up like this. But if her mane was a little bit longer, or if I was trying to get it to lay down, I would go across it like this and brush it from the top down. And so then we'll move on to her tail. Onto her tail. And remember, you never want to stand directly behind a horse. You always want to let them know when you're about to walk around their hind end. That's just another safety tip. So when you are standing behind your horse, you want to stand to the side. And when you walk behind them, you want to make sure you put a hand on their bottom so they know you're coming behind them. So for her tail, I'm using this Equus Survivor Super Detangler Shine. And I'm going to put about a dime size dollop in my hand. And then I'm going to rub my hands together to spread it out. And then I'm going to start with the bottom of her tail. And I'm going to really work it in with my fingers. And then I'm going to work my way up to the top of her tail. And then I like to put just a little bit on the base as well. So once I feel like I've wiped all of the product off onto her tail, pretty evenly spread around, I'm going to go ahead and start brushing. So you always want to brush from the bottom of the tail first. So you want to slide your hand down to the bottom like this, and then you want to brush that bit that you have until it's tangle free. And then you're going to move your hand up a little bit and do it again. And then you're going to brush that much tail until you feel like it's tangle free. And then, guessed it, we move up again and brush. So we're going to keep doing this all the way until we get to the top of the tail. And I don't brush her tail every day. Sometimes they can actually thin their tail out when you brush it too much. And so I only brush it sometimes, and when I do brush it, I make sure I always use some type of detangling and preferably also a conditioning product to help keep the tail hair strong and long. So she doesn't have a huge tail, so it doesn't take me very long to brush it, but here we are, a beautifully brushed and detangled tail. So again, it's springtime here. We're in South Mississippi. We have a lot of bugs. And so the last step in my grooming for every single day, of course, is to fly spray. And I found that this Piranha Wipe and Spray works better than anything else I've tried. But it is really greasy, so I don't like to use it for shows because the dirt actually sticks to the fly spray and makes your horse look more dirty. But again, so I'm going to end my grooming session by going ahead and thoroughly fly spraying my horse around her whole body on both sides. And then I like to wipe this fly spray in a little bit, so I'll usually either use a soft brush, a rag, or my cactus claw, and I'll actually take it and just sort of work the fly spray into their coat a little bit so that it doesn't just sit on top. So I'm just going to wipe it in really quick. The good thing about this fly spray too is it does give them a really nice shine. So then I'll just go ahead and make sure I hit both sides of her body with this, and then I also make sure to put fly spray on her face. The bugs seem to be really attracted to her specifically, and so I have to make sure that she is fully coated in fly spray every time I go to ride. So I also want to make sure that I really get her ears with the fly spray so that the bugs don't come. We have a lot of deer flies that like to come and land on her ears. And so I'm just going to go ahead and hit her whole face with some fly spray. And then we are ready to go.